Hi, this is Chris Olson from the Driven to Engage podcast. As happens from time to time, we get into conversations with folks and it just starts happening organically. And that's what happened in our most recent conversation with Melissa Rimoldi. A really interesting journey that this lady's had in automotive, and one that I think you'll enjoy hearing as well. And she's got an amazing voice for what's happening in the industry and the direction that she's taking in her career. I think just speaks to that maverick spirit of trusting in your skill set, your experience, and your message, that it resonates with people. And I think you'll enjoy the conversation. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Melissa Rimoldi. We're recording the Driven to Engage podcast with Melissa. Now, is it Rimoldi or Rimoldi?
Rimoldi.
Rimoldi. Tell me about car now, because here's what I'm dealing with, right? Is I have a fundamental belief that web forms suck. And
Correct.
I was reminded of this because I was looking to go to Digital Dealer. And then I was like, well, you know what would it look like if I got a booth? So I'm like looking around, click web form, click web form. Like, wait a minute, this is Digital Dealer, for Christ's sake. Like, of all people, it shouldn't be you guys doing web forms, right? And it was such a poor customer experience. It was the genesis for because I remembered what you guys were doing. I had signed up Hopkins Acura back in the day with it, and it just, a broke store for process is just not gonna, it's gonna fail, right? And it was the wrong client to put it into. And so I put it into this store. We're marginally better, but they're just not paying attention. So we're getting conversations started. And here's an example. Last night, 5:45. Now, early days, everybody was in it, but then we're having really fucked up conversations too. Like, just like,
Well, you do get some Looney Tunes coming in at those hours. Yeah.
But it's how we respond though, too. Like, there's no social graces for these salespeople. And I think that's another conversation we need to discuss.
That's a whole nother conversation, right? So
it's like salespeople have become the creepy guy at the bar at closing time, right? It's like, hi, my name is, do you want to come in? It's like, wait a minute. Like, when are we going to engage our customers? What happened to the salesmanship? What happened to wanting to learn about our customers so that we earn their business that way, not that I have it and, my markup is better than the other guys.
Right there. And I think, and this is what we were talking about earlier, is 2020 kind of changed everything about that. So prior to 2020, we had a lot of dealers. We had over 3,000 dealers on the CarNow platform.
Wow.
And we had, I think at that point in time, probably 17 OEM certifications. So, we were strong and a lot of people were very engaged. And I think, if you don't have boots on the ground and people walking into the store doing refresh training, turnover's kind of high and, it depends on the store and depends on the group and so forth. But I think if you don't have people in the store doing that interaction and having those conversations, eventually it's just a shiny object and they're going to lose sight because they're just so focused on so many other things.
Yeah, because I blasted the sales managers yesterday because it's like, you guys have the door closed to the showroom. Like, nope, the lights are off, the cars are pulled in, like nobody's home. Customer's looking for an Escalade, and he has to buy one before the end of the year because he's using it for the tax. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And so he's sitting there, bless his heart, right? 5 minutes. Do you have any 2024 Escalades? Let me get you an agent that bought. Then it gets to Osvaldo or whatever the guy's name was. Let me get, same question. Response, let me get you a member of our team. Crickets. What's a good, in case we get disconnected?
Why did he go into, so he had no training apparently, because obviously the
Well, I
inventory
think
is connected.
right,
So he could
I
have sent that image of the vehicle and the
but
product description and
but I
everything
think
to
there's the
one.
2024 is not out yet. And
Gotcha.
so that's where I think they went, okay, let me get you a member of the team. 10 more minutes go. The guy responds with his phone number, bless his heart, and his name. Didn't respond to email, tells us he'd rather talk on the phone. It gets to 6 o'clock finally, then it gets pushed into the CRM. Yeah, I think you're not, I think you're right. I think he wasn't trained because he should have sent the signal. There was never a
Correct.
signal sent to the dealership.
Yeah, it should have
And
been, hot alert, hot leads.
yeah, anyway, it gets to
Sounds like we
like,
need to do revisit some training in that store. But, there are word tracks that they just simply have to click on to make it, their tonality, their way, their personality, basically. So there's all kinds of shortcuts in there for them to, really utilize the platform.
yeah. Well, and that, even that, like I talked to Danny Ibrahim. Well, I don't know if he was there when you
Oh,
were
yeah.
there. I
He
love
was my
Dan.
performance manager. Yeah.
Was he? So
Yeah.
he was at Shift Digital when I was there. I absolutely there's something about there's a spirit about him that is really cool. I
He's
just
just
like
an easy, go with the flow kind of guy.
yeah. Yeah, surfer guy, like he's SoCal to a T, right? The best part of SoCal in my opinion. But he's now on the technical side of it, right? So he's specifically with the chatbot and I want to rewrite what we're saying and because it's just yeah. Anyway, so that's
Well, it's part of an AI tree, right? So
it's
you're
but
making
it's
assumptions.
not an AI though.
I know. So then you're making assumptions, and then you get people jumping in, and sometimes multiple people jumping in. So there has to be processes wrapped around it.
100%. And that's
Yeah.
where, you know, it's like inevitably the one guy in the store who can barely speak English. I to be honest with you, I don't know why they have him there. Like every time I listen to AB talk to a customer, I just cringe. And AB gets that one. He's gotten so many of the, I've been in there. I'm like, hey, say this to the customer. And then he takes like I wrote it out, just say the words. And then he basically punches him in the face by re-saying it in a different way that's just like, no, not like that. So
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
um,
Like I said, we were talking about it earlier. The dynamics have completely changed, and you know, look at everything is online, and you can't even get to a human person anymore. There's so many different prompts and this or that, and then, the AI stuff is coming into play,
yeah,
and, that's another I'm still, like, on the fence with that one. I mean, it's pretty cool, but there is some dangerous elements, in that as well.
yeah. So that might be a conversation for us to touch on as well. Okay, so let's get back to what you're doing now. So what led is there maybe we shouldn't skip ahead because you shared the story with me when you were in college and then working at Mazda and that entire experience. Um where what transitioned from your time at Mazda? Because it sounds like that time that you had with the team where it was the boys club.
Yep.
Kind of take me back through that.
Yeah. So, as a product support engineer and being the first female to, get that job, of course, with no mechanical background, it was eye-opening and obviously a very big stretch for me
Mhm.
to and big shoes to fill,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, but it's really developing that thick skin and rolling up your sleeves and getting dirty. So, you know, I was on multiple conference calls, and back in the day, we had these conference rooms set up, so we would have conferences with Japan. Of
Mm,
course, at the oddest times of the night, right? Because they're ahead of schedule.
right.
Um, but during some of those conversations, I started presenting, and then they would giggle, "Hee, hee, 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 hee," like they're not
Oh,
used to having a female.
right. Right. Oh my
So at first
gosh.
it kinda took me off guard, and I was like, "Why are they laughing? Like, this is a serious issue."
Yeah.
Um, but they were just not used to having that, and over time, you just kind of ignore it, and you just keep presenting what you need to present and, try to get as much feedback as you possibly can. So it was cute, but it was also like I could have taken it in a negative way, but I tried to spin it as a positive.
Yeah.
And it actually did help, propel my career, because once I did my term as a product support engineer, the executives were doing some sort of tour or walk through all the facilities. And I was out there working. I was pulling apart an MPV back in the days, and I had everything out. And they're like, "What are you doing?" And so when they saw that, they're like, "This is crazy." No, I stood out.
Yeah.
And so eventually I got fast tracked and I was put into warranty. So I went into the warranty department to kind of reduce and increase, reduce cost reduction. It was a cost reduction
Yeah. Okay.
initiative. And so that was really fun for me, because they're not that dealers like audits, but there were some things that we needed to audit. So
I bet.
um, we did some really cool initiatives with that and with great success. And then I was promoted to service and parts marketing manager. So that's when I was really truly in fixed operations, and basically kind of that's where my heart and soul is.
Is
If
it?
you
Yeah.
think
Okay.
about it, well, I mean, most of my tenure was on, service and parts, or parts and, fixed
Yeah.
operations per
Yeah.
se. And I grew a tremendous amount of respect, because oftentimes when you go into it for dealer visits, for example, the last thing they ever do is go shake the mechanics and technicians' hands.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
made it, having all that experience, and I only had 2 models that I had to, report on.
Right.
They have
Okay.
to know the full lineup,
Right.
and it's difficult. Like, you cannot imagine how complex it is, especially when you add in all the diagnostic tools.
Oh.
So for me, I always go in the back and I shake their hands.
Hmm.
And I thank them for what they do each and every day, because it's hard work. It's
Yeah.
very hard work. And I think, they are the strongest brand advocates for any automotive
Mm.
company.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't
Yeah,
that the truth? Because they're the ones with their heads in it on the
yeah,
daily, right? Yeah.
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 And, don't be mistaken that they're talking to their friends, and they're talking, so if there's a lot of technical issues and the things, that stuff is getting out. And again, when you're, fighting against, quality image or whatever, it could either compound it, or it can completely just let it go, because they're saying, "Oh, no, no, we're not seeing that at all,"
Yeah.
condition.
So now we should go back and preface some things here, because what you were describing with how people were reacting to you because you're a woman working in a quote unquote man's world, right? This wasn't the 50s, 60s, 70s, or even the 80s, right? We're talking like
It's early
late,
90s. Yeah,
early
19
90s. Okay.
yeah,
All right.
1992 is when I
Wow.
started. So,
Yeah. So
23, young, fresh, excited, optimistic. Again, I went to school to get my marketing or business, BS degree in business administration with an emphasis in marketing. So, did I ever think for a minute that I'd be in automotive? Absolutely not.
yeah.
But, once I got in, it's like once the oil gets in your blood, you become fascinated by it.
Right.
And, the opportunities, and Mazda was tremendous for me. I mean, I truly grew up there.
Mm.
And I was lucky enough to, get promoted into different channels throughout the whole organization. So once I did service and parts marketing, we launched the Full Circle Service Initiative, the walk around. And
Oh
so
wow.
having a female perspective on that was like, the red, yellow, green. You know, I was at the point, and I was a strong advocate that you have to be transparent. If it's green, it's green. If it's yellow, it's yellow. But don't be always consistently trying to make things red when they're not,
Yeah.
because what you're ultimately doing is planting seeds for future business. And so if you're honest with them, you're gonna keep them in that cycle and repeat customers coming back in for service, because you could say, "Yes, last time your tires were in the yellow. This might be the time for us to check those out and see if we can get you some new tires." And
Right.
so we happen to have a special, so I mean, it's just, and we had long debates over this, but I think it worked. And we did form a service and parts council,
Mm,
because one thing I did learn being at the OEM is, surprisingly or not, about there's a very small percentage who are running the company that have ever been on the ground in retail, boots on the ground, doing all of that stuff. But they're yet making decisions for dealers
right.
and for consumers. So it was my one big lesson, is that I always try to form a committee anytime we were doing a service and parts, or parts and service, or a fixed ops initiative, is to like get it down, get the concept down, present it to the dealers. And I'll tell you, it never failed. So we thought we had it completely buttoned up. Everything check, check, check. We'd get in front of the parts and service managers or directors, and they'd be like, boom, 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 boom. You didn't think of this, and you didn't think of this, and you didn't think of this, and you didn't think of this. And it was like, oh,
Yeah.
but that's what made us successful in launching these initiatives, is getting, number one, that feedback, that direct feedback from the people who are doing it each and every day. And they did help us, fill the gaps and make it a successful, launch, and a successful program.
That is such an insightful piece. And I'd kind of like to touch on that a bit, just from the limited experience I've had being in the OEMs, is that they don't care what it's just, we are pontificating from on high, and you shall, break
You
rock,
shall obey.
right?
You
So
shall sign on the dotted line.
it's funny, the dynamic when you empower the people who have to do the work with designing or having a hand in the design of whatever that may be, right? We did that with one of our most recent clients, where we basically went in and facilitated the conversation to say, when an internet lead comes into the dealership, how should we respond to it? What should it look like? What are the
Right.
activities that should happen? And we spent some time kind of dictating, or not dictating, but curating the things
Mhm.
the dealership stood for. Like what's different about us than somebody else, and using that prism then to design what that process would look like. And it's crazy. Now, it's not like it's just set it and forget it and they off and run, and all of a sudden we're running 20% close rates. Uh, but it what it did was it gave some engagement and got the
Buying.
yeah, it got them
Yeah.
connected to the work, to where it wasn't just some, you know, new dude walking in saying this is how we're going to do it. And so,
This is the next big thing, right?
yeah, yeah. So it's fascinating to hear an OEM do that. And I can imagine that yeah, just knowing that relationship, the acrimony between, dealerships and the OEM, that would have had to have bridged quite a few gaps in that. I can just imagine that zone meetings would go different, you know?
Totally. Yes.
Yeah. It
And especially when you have an advisory board, that we selectively, they had to, fill out a form, and we reviewed everything to make sure, did you hit these criteria, this, and are you the voice of the, the market? Do you have good relations with the dealers? Because we want them inevitably to go back and dig in.
mm,
Markets are different. So market, in the North Pacific Northwest, or here, or in the East, or in the South, they're all
yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And so you have to make sure you're getting the large dealers, the small dealers, the medium-sized dealers, the, dealers in rural areas, the metro dealers. And so you're getting a really good forum of a diverse
Mm,
group. So you're trying to get all of the feedback from, top to bottom, or
yeah.
bottom to top.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So was that the idea of kind of empowering them to have, and you're saying you would create committees around
Mhm.
new concepts?
Any initiative, yeah, so
Yeah.
really my philosophy is that any initiative I was working on, we always had an advisory board because inevitably, I told you 9 out of the 10 times, they would find something that we
Mm.
didn't think,
Right, right.
because we're sitting in a conference room and we're thinking, this, and that, but in the real world, that's not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, not to sound sexist, but that totally makes sense because I feel like the male ego is, how could they possibly not wanna take our initiative and run with it the way we dictated it, right?
Especially
Um,
back in those days. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So, it was a lot going into obviously a male-dominated, you know, realm or field.
yeah,
Um, but it was, like I said, I love and I've enjoyed every single bit that I've done. And, I ended up staying at Mazda for 13 years. I eventually did get into sales. They convinced me to go into sales. So I felt like I was really well-rounded,
yeah,
in the OEM side, on the factory side, is to, have the opportunity and the trust of the executives to put me in these challenging positions that were way above my head to
mm,
see if I would sink or swim.
right,
So at times, it was like I was stressed, but
yeah.
at the same time, I was excited at the same time. So it was a weird dichotomy going on. Um,
It's funny you say that because my oldest daughter goes to UCLA, and she's she's always done really well in school, but has a bit of anxiety in the sense that being in so she's a mathematics major, like, graduated at the top of her high school class, just one of those kids that she took 7 AP courses her senior year, right? She just wanted to spike the football on her academic high school career, gets to UCLA and is just really kind of anxious about getting out and meeting people. And so we always have these conversations about finding comfort in discomfort, you know?
mhm.
And it sounds like your career was really an example of finding comfort in discomfort.
Completely just yeah, I was very uncomfortable or discomfortable, but I had to, I'm pretty strong-willed,
Yeah,
not to say that my feelings don't get hurt,
sure.
but over time, you just really, these guys are great, you know, the family that we had at Mazda was so unique
Mm,
that we basically grew up together.
yeah.
And what's strange is when I decided to leave Mazda in 2006, it wasn't because I really wanted to. It was because in my 30s, I needed to do something different because I needed to get more experience under my belt in order to climb the ladder. So
Mm,
it was like getting into retail, getting into the vendor and supplier side, and really trying to broaden my experience. So I took a risk and joined one of my vendors who was priorly Who's Calling back in the days.
oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah. So they did some programs for me at Mazda, which were really successful. And then one of the partners and I got together and we opened a company or formed a company called Market View 360.
Okay.
And so that was right in the time period where,
What year
you know,
would that have been?
2005, 6, 7, around there.
I wonder if we crossed paths then, because I was
Maybe,
with Automotive Internet Management, AIM, and
maybe.
Bill Phillips. Anyway, we they were doing things with phone tracking then that most people weren't really paying attention to. So it's fascinating that to me is, yeah, it's just about communicating with customers, right? I
Mhm,
feel like we really got to lean into that in the market that the headwinds we're running into. It's really coming down to our ability to, it seems like emotional intelligence has just gone missing.
mhm. Well, I
And
mean, just look out, like, if you go into a restaurant and you observe, there's really no communication anymore. I mean, I see these kids sitting in the booth and they're talking to each other, but they're on their phones, and it's like sometimes they're just chatting back and forth and they're not having that human interaction and there's
yeah,
no it's just everybody's and I'm guilty too.
Right.
because my phone is with me all the time.
Yeah.
And so when you don't have it, you feel like something's wrong. And you almost go into a panic attack because you
Yeah.
don't have
Well,
technology.
you absolutely go into a I literally left my phone. My partner and I went out to dinner last night. We get up to go to Yogurtland, and I'm like, wait a minute. We'd walked a block, and I'm running back to the restaurant.
Yeah, isn't
Yeah.
it scary? I mean, it
Oh,
feels like, oh, my whole life is in this phone.
well, just the idea that I might have to go back, the whole thing that was going back. I do not have time right now to rebuild my phone, with everything that I need it where it's at,
Yeah,
So yeah, you're
exactly,
right.
and it is no fun. So,
Mm.
technology, in my opinion, has, kind of ruined. I tried to keep it from my kids as much as possible
Yeah.
because and luckily, I'm very fortunate again, is that my kids were more outside. They weren't
Mm.
playing games on they did, but not like I would bribe them, "Please stay inside and play a game," so I didn't have to, like, chase them around the neighborhood.
Right.
But no, they always wanted to be riding bikes, skateboarding, playing baseball, playing football, and just doing all these activities, which I am now thankful for. But back
Mm.
in the days, I'm like, "Can't you just stay home so I could just relax?" You know? I need to get house cleaning done and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but the technology now, they have the audacity when they were in their teens, they have the audacity to text me, "Can you bring me a soda? Can you bring me a sandwich?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
You know what I love? College is awesome because now they got to get it sorted out, right? Like, um, my son's at Pomona now, and he texted me the other day, and I can just imagine. I've seen his dorm and where he and his roommate are, and he hits me up. He sends me a link to this product on Amazon. He's like, "Can I buy this?" And it's something to eliminate musky odors. And I'm just like, that
Oh,
at least he's evolved to the point that he can smell shitty smells, So,
right, yeah. I can
uh,
only imagine what those smells are, but
uh, yeah. So, Market 360,
yeah,
uh,
Market View 360, we got that up and running, timing was perfect, and again, we were all about this is introducing email marketing, we were now introducing this is the early stages of SMS and email
yeah, right.
blasts and direct mail was still a popular thing. So that's basically what we're using multi-channel marketing for
Yeah,
that.
okay.
And so we got in on a RFP for BMW. And luckily, and it's not just me, it was a whole team effort, by the way.
Yeah,
Because of my background, I was able to they wanted a mail builder site where you can do email and direct mail pieces
yeah.
with a click of the button. And so what we formed was 4 clicks, and you can create a whole custom email or direct mail campaign.
Wow.
And what we did is we built an algorithm where it would take in not only the dealer's information, but the manufacturer's information, the different lead sources information. And we were able to build an algorithm to show that, those with the highest propensity to purchase
Mm,
or service, for example, um, would show up at the top of the list. So if you had limited budget, you're gonna get the best out of that bucket of
right.
consumers to target.
Yeah.
And so they would go ahead and create their own pieces, and it was personalized to every dealer, and they had certain levels of personalization, but a lot of it was controlled by corporate.
Mm,
And we had to comply with, the brand standards and,
right.
what they wanted dealers to customize versus what they did not want the dealers to customize. Obviously, disclaimers were already written for them,
Mm.
but
Oh,
it would, automatically populate with whatever they were trying to advertise.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, in 4 clicks, boom. And, it was really simple and got charged to the part statement. So that was, a
The old
fun experience.
the old part statement.
Yeah.
So many
I
things
don't know if
end up
that's
on
ever
that
gonna
thing.
change. One thing we should talk about, it would be a fun podcast, is the sales incentives. It just blows my mind, that they haven't changed. They're still like PDFs.
Really?
And it just boggles my mind, and so when you're making mid-month enhancements and so forth, it's all how they all have their books and their
Yeah.
sheet,
Yeah.
and they're still doing it. So, how do you take that to the next level and, integrate it and automate it in such a way? But we still have the old school ways that if it ain't broke it, don't fix it. And it's just, one of those things that we release to the dealers, the next morning after, the big sales close, the month end close.
It's so funny because you'd almost, as a desk manager, you'd pride yourself on the organization of your PDF printouts, right? Like, and you knew right where to turn. It's so crazy that with technology, we're still doing that. Like, it should
Yeah.
just, there should be, okay, well, we have the idea. So then it's you and I. We just sit down, we create the standard, our
Uh-huh.
own ISO 9000 and whatever for the standards on
Well, 'cause yeah, and
tenant.
I take digital retailing for an example is, then we have to take the PDFs and then we have to, convert them, and then we have to run them through some tests, and then we had to make sure that they're calculating correctly. So, in the
Every month.
infancy stage of it was crazy. And then you have to pile on, mid-month enhancements. So
Oh,
when those change, then everything changes, so it it's evolved now, but back, in
yeah.
the 2019, 2020, it was, we're still, getting dealers onboarded with digital real-time retailing and, having, the numbers calculate correctly.
Yeah. And that's everybody's complaint with digital retailing is it doesn't match up to the DMS. So I don't want to use it. You know,
Yeah.
it's like the
Well,
biggest,
they're still using 2. They're using their,
right.
theirs, and then they're using the solution. So to them, it's an inconvenience. So it needs to bridge that gap somehow.
And we're so at that, we're at the lexicon right now, coming out of COVID, uh, all of the market headwinds, like you can't one or two things, okay, but it's like we're coming out of a pandemic, interest rates are at all-time high. We've printed money, so we've devalued it to the extent that people don't have as much to spend. Car payments are
I don't have a lot of discretionary to spend at the moment.
right, and
Yeah,
you're crazy enough to go out and start your own business while doing this, right? So
I am.
yeah. So talk to me a little bit about Legion Force. Like, what was the
So
impetus? What was
so
the
yeah,
motivation?
that's so funny that you say that. Is so, after just going back for a second, after Market View
Mm.
360, we ended up getting the BMW account, and then we ended up getting an offer from SCI, and we sold it. And then remember 2007, 2008?
Yeah, it's good times.
Boom.
Yeah.
And so luckily I was recruited by Volkswagen Group of America, and it was just the perfect transition. So I was their regional marketing manager for the West Coast. So I was homebound, but I also, had the ability to work in advertising and marketing as well as media. And, it was great fun. Not always, the best dealer ad association meetings at sometimes because, sometimes they don't like the advertising
Yeah.
and sometimes they don't like this. And so it was a little granular at times,
Mhm.
but, having, most of the dealer principals and having those relationships and those discussions was truly, why I think I'm successful today
Wow.
is, it just having their immediate feedback and the ability to pick up the phone and call them and say, "What do you think about this? What do you think about that?"
Right.
And just get your finger on the pulse on what's going on. And,
So
some of
still
those
leaning back into your days from Mazda then,
I
right? Like,
always do. Yeah.
let me get some buy-in here, right?
I just
Love
need
it.
someone to be my sounding board
Yep.
or just someone to kind of think things through if it makes sense or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so after the Volkswagen deal, I did happen to go through a divorce, so I was 83 miles away, so I was in Westlake Village, and
Oh,
I live, in Orange County, so it was about an 83-mile commute one way through Los Angeles.
yeah, the worst, like, oh my god, you'd lose half
So,
your life on that.
I was in the car for a turnaround trip about 5.5 hours a day, so I had to, optimize that, and that's before texting was not, an issue,
Right.
and driving with my laptop on my passenger seat wasn't an issue. I mean, so I was multitasking, working, taking conference calls, and doing all that, trying to make the most out of my commute as I possibly could.
Jeez.
And I still love BlackBerries because I could literally type a memo, drive with my knee, and I was all good. Never got in an accident, by the way.
Oh, you're better than me. I used to live in Canyon Lake back in the '90s and would drive to Santa Fe Springs every day while they were building those express lanes on the 91, and it was
Mhm.
literally, like you're saying, 6 hours a day.
Yeah,
3 hours there,
insane,
3 hours home. Yeah, it was
insane.
brutal. I hated it. Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. It does wear on you physically and
Yeah,
mentally, so by the time I got home, I was completely drained, but I
done.
still had kids, so it was like this.
Yeah,
But it does become a balance, and you do figure out your routine and what works for you.
yeah.
But then my dream came true, and I, was able to get into InOcean Worldwide, which is the advertising agency for Hyundai. And so my dream came true because I finally got, after all these years, I finally got to the advertising agency, and I loved every single bit of it. It was,
Wow.
exciting, it was fun. I had to, learn some new things, like, on the inside, and um, Hyundai was just a great brand to work for and work with.
Mm,
A little different from most of the other brands I had been with, but having that diversity and the experience and different learning different ways of doing things or getting from A to Z was, that was an interesting dynamic for me.
yeah, yeah. So, what was your role there with
I was a account director for tier 2 and then
okay,
also worked on some, the events.
okay.
So, yeah, the
Oh, that
summer, spring, summer, fall,
yeah,
winter,
yeah,
but for the most part, it changed to 3 event periods because of budget.
yeah, okay.
But the year end was probably our biggest. Black Friday and year end were the biggest, which we're coming up upon right now.
Yeah. So what would have transitioned you out of the dream job then?
So, after 5 years of being at the ad agency, there had been a lot of changes over at the corporate office, and I had Carnell wanting to get an appointment with me, and I didn't really wanna hear their spiel, so
Right,
I kept putting them off for, like, I don't know, maybe 6 months or so. Just delete, because I
right.
I just, wasn't in that frame of mind, and then I said, "Okay, okay, you guys have been very diligent. I will give you 15 minutes." And so, Tim Cox, who
Yeah,
and Andy, Park, they were I set up a few conference calls for them, not necessarily for Hyundai because they were not an option, but I did, some tire companies that we had, business with and some verticals,
yeah, okay.
that were outside of the automotive sector because we had a biz dev team there. So they were pretty impressed with that, and then they just kept in touch with me, and over time, they're like, "Hey, we've got an opportunity for you. It's not perfect, but we want you to join the team early."
Mm,
And, they made me a really good offer, and it was something new. So
yeah,
technology. Now I'm going into technology, but still automotive, but I'm going into technology.
right.
So it was fun to work with the engineers and to, build a team of people
Mm,
because literally we did not have any marketing. We had our business cards, so literally it was developing and growing a team. And, literally we were out hitting and knocking on dealers' doors every single day. And they're like, "Car who?"
right,
They had
right,
no idea who we were.
right.
And so we were literally busting blisters on our feet, trying to get our name and exposure out there. And I think once they saw what we were doing with chat and text and, the way we had it set up versus some of the other chat companies out there, um, we held off on introducing digital retailing because we knew just by the text and the chat alone, the market was not ready for digital retailing. So we kind of postponed that. So I agreed to have half of the United States, half of the West,
Mm.
basically. And so it was, building teams, getting out there, selling deals, and churning through all of this stuff. So we grew the base, and then when they felt it was ready, it was probably 3 years in. Um, I was switched over to business dev, and that's ultimately where they wanted me to go because of my OEM relationships.
Right. Right.
It's just that we were too in the infancy stage. We didn't have enough clients, enough automotive dealers on our solution. So I had to work on that first and then I got transitioned into the business development. And that's when I started working with the OEMs to get certifications and
Yeah.
going through all of the, capabilities and all the RFPs and RFQs and
Oh,
all that stuff. So that was fun. But then when I guess we were talking about this a little bit earlier, is what changed at Carnell. And so the VCs came in.
yeah. Those damn VCs, huh?
And it's a good thing. I mean, but it changed the culture. And so after I had this, significant, I think we grew 55% during COVID because and manufacturer, Melissa, get me on the solution. Because we had partially shut down. We had fully closed. We had so many different
Right.
scenarios where we had to pivot. So being able to transact and communicate online was their number one priority so that dealers can continue to
Right.
move metal and continue to have these, service vehicles. So that was insanity where we just busted at the seams, and it was great fun and it was great excitement.
Wow.
Um, and I started to see in my head, because I'm a fixed ops kind of gal, I started to see that, the microchip. I started to see that, inventory shortages. And so I'm thinking, oh, digital retailing is not where it's going to be. I need to move back to fixed operations.
Mm.
And we need to drive dealer profitability through the fixed ops department. And
Mm.
so that's when I transitioned over to fixed ops and worked with a vendor very short term. Wasn't the right fit or the connection.
Yeah.
Um, but now, what I'm doing basically through all of my little adventures is that the last few suppliers or vendors have always wanted to hire me for my network. Not saying I'm popular or anything like that. It's just that over the years, over 30 years, we're all at that. We all stay connected. So we have people at every brand you can think of, but we all started at Mazda.
Right.
That's so weird.
Wow.
But
Wow.
so we're all dispersed everywhere. So you have connections, and they have you've worked with them before, so you automatically get, the trust and the credibility
Mm-hmm.
to at least open the door for a conversation. So what I decided to do is really try to bridge the gap there. So right now I'm vetting suppliers and vendors and kind of helping them navigate, are they really capable with their current suite of solutions to get an OEM client? And right now, a lot of them are not in any position to be poised to get in the front door. It takes a lot to earn an OEM, position.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of like looking at the capabilities and looking at what they have. And then I'm trying to build strategies and plans to help them get to that destination. But it does take a lot. And then, I'm even finding ways to connect business to business, because I see that they have this technology and they have this platform. So I think the two of them combined will, transform the whole, industry.
Yeah.
So it's still, just kind of bringing people and groups and businesses together and forming an alliance, a strategic alliance so that we could, you know, create opportunities that are unstoppable.
Mm.
So
So
yeah, it's been a journey, and right now I haven't even launched yet, just so you know.
yeah, well,
And
that's okay. So I don't want
yeah, I haven't launched yet, so it's still
to.
coming soon, and I'm taking my sweet time,
Yeah.
to do to do this because I want to be very, not necessarily perfect, but I want it to be spot on and tailored to exactly what issues we're facing in the industry today,
Mm,
and where we're going to be headed. And then also, a lot of the dealers are asking me, Melissa, can you please vet our vendors and help corporate, help the OEMs do this too, because,
right.
9 out of 10 times they don't, these vendors that they're making us or forcing us to sign up with don't work,
Right.
but they're yet pushing it down. You need to be on this. You need to be on this. And then they abandon them, a year or two later.
Right.
So there's so much that I'm thinking about and so much that I'm developing right now. But it really is tailored to the OEMs. It's tailored to franchise dealers. It's dated, for advertising agencies. In fact, I'm working with one who's contracted me into because they want to get into the vertical of automotive, but they don't know how.
Mm,
So I'm helping them navigate through different relationships to connect. And then, of course, you get constantly hit up, and I'm sure you do too, by industry or market researchers trying to get some feedback. A lot of it being from international. So,
oh,
I
really?
mean, there's,
Interesting.
yeah, it's crazy. They look at your background on LinkedIn and they say, "Well, can you help? Would you give us 30 minutes of your time and we'll pay you?" So there's so many opportunities out there, and I'm really excited as we're getting closer to finishing up the website. And I do have a lot of strong advocates behind me, and in fact, I want to be able to help others as well, whether it be through podcasts or just working together, to help your business grow with a network of people. And what can we do to refer business to each other, or how can we help each other? And it's just really, I'm at the point in my career where I've done my tour of duty, I say, for the
Mhm.
last 30 years. And now I'm at the point where my kids are older. I don't need to be making $1 million. I just want the simple life. And I just want to be able to use my background and my expertise as well as my teams to really bring a non-biased perspective,
Mm,
but based on real world experience, because we've been in the trenches, we've been in some of these positions, and we do have some of the relationships, and kind of offer that up to give a different perspective that is not swayed one way or the other.
yeah.
So I think that's important.
Mm. It's it's interesting. When you were talking about going on your own, I'm curious that I've had the opportunity to think about that a bit. A few months ago, a company approached me because they were looking for someone that to fill a national role, a VP role, and I went out, interviewed for it, and they'd asked me to write a 1 hour presentation addressing 4 bullet points. And I love what I'm doing. And it was an interesting opportunity because it would afford me to scratch an itch that I still
Mhm.
probably exists a bit because it was running a bigger team
Mhm.
of really high caliber performance coaches, if you will. But the exercise of going through making that presentation made me realize like I'm where I need to be, And so, like, as much as I'm definitely leaving money on the table because I see just how much money people are making in retail, even now as we're starting to run into these headwinds, but I wouldn't change it for the world because I feel like, at least for my skill set, like the clients that I do have given me afforded me the opportunity to develop something that is unique and that it speaks to what we need right now. And so,
Mhm.
we've developed a coaching platform. So our whole thing is I don't train salespeople.
Going back to, having affiliations with, people, again, that I want to surround myself with, that are genuine and they're authentic and really wanting to help, transform or create change or processes and things of that nature. So That's the exciting part, is to work with people that you really enjoy working with. And
Yeah.
we're all united in trying to bring solutions to the table to help, the automotive industry succeed
Yeah.
and primarily keep the dealers, doors open by keeping them profitable. So that's the most important thing that I
Mm.
want to do.
I'm so glad you said that, because that exercise of creating that presentation, it afforded me the opportunity to sit back and ask myself, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Like, what would I wanted? Like, I grew up working in my mom's country store when I was 10 years old. The only money I got was when I could get somebody to give me a quarter because I did a good job washing their windows,
Or you wanted a jawbreaker.
or no, there was no taking candy.
Yeah.
That's for damn sure. But it was because
Oh boy.
I had a bicycle that I wanted to buy. It was $147 in 1982 or something, and so I had goals, but I was stacking quarters. But it's like I never that the whole I started selling cars in 1989, and the whole car perspective, the whole kind of that, getting a customer, we would do training on the lot to get the customer in the trunk, you know,
Mhm,
um,
mhm,
keys going on the roof, like just
mhm.
things that I saw. Like, I loved the business. So I was just happy go lucky kid, go out, make friends with people, sell, 20, 30 cars in a month, 1 month, and then sell five the next. And, my checks fluctuated like the wind. And, um,
Sales is cyclical.
yeah, but it just never really resonated with me. But I love this business. I love that a kid who I hated school the moment I was out of high school. Like, I barely graduated. I just wanted to get out in the world, and classrooms I just could not. It just
Well, you're
did
a
not.
hands-on. You're a hands-on guy. You don't, necessarily get all you're probably so intelligent that you get bored by having to do mundane things such as reading a chapter and then taking a test.
Yeah, I don't know about the intelligent part, but yeah, what you're talking about with reading a book and, like, that was just not. I had zero
Not your
appetite for
thing.
that.
Yeah, it was not your thing.
Yeah, well,
And
it
it doesn't it's not for everybody.
it's not. But what it I love the business because it afforded a guy like me a place to go to make a really spectacular income without really having had to earn it. But I always took that approach that I just wanted to go out and make a friend. And
Mhm.
so at a young age, and I think that's probably, I have my mom to thank for that, because I learned an emotional intelligence at 10 years old that most people never learn. And so I just got to know people and would listen and could connect with people. And I feel like what that exercise really showed me is, what do I really want to do? Do I want to go do it for somebody else? Because what I really want to do, and this is that I saw a saying that if your goals don't scare you, they're not big enough. And so it was like, it's funny how the universe kind of speaks to you in those things. And it was like, in that moment, I was like, you know what? I want to change the public's perception of what it is to buy a car. That's my
Mhm.
goal. Like, even
Yeah.
however I can do that. So what you had just talked about is, I want to work with people like that, because I know I can't do it myself. And it may not be that we create a business together, but you create that network of like-minded individuals who have that same purpose, right?
Right.
Because there's no way with what I do. Like, my whole goal is really getting managers to be better mentors to their salespeople. They don't need
Mhm.
people to show them how to be better desk managers. They got that worked out, right? They know how to sell cars. What they don't know how to do is lead, how to mentor, how to be that person for them that somebody else was for them, right? We've all
Yeah.
had that mentor. And that's one of the things I ask them in our kickoff meetings is, think about that person or people who have impacted your life, that because they thought more of you than you thought of yourself at the time, that you're better for having had them in your life. Who is that person? And then we ask them, of the people that work with you now, who thinks of you in that light?
Mhm.
And if you kind of question that, that's where we're at. Like, that's where we need to play, especially,
Yeah.
right? And so That's what I want to do. I want to get managers to be better mentors. I want them to be more like right now. It's funny, Melissa, we're listening to phone calls, and one of my clients kind of tasked me with, "Hey, can you just shop my competition? What are they saying that we aren't?"
Mhm.
And that took me down a rabbit hole. And now I've listened to hundreds and hundreds of phone calls, and it's single digit percentages where you run into a salesperson who actually asks a question beyond, is it available? What's your best price? They all, so I would ask that question, I'm looking for this vehicle. Is it available? Yep, it's available. When did you want to come in? Literally,
Well,
that's,
sometimes you even get I mean, I was blown away when I was listening. I was on the sales floor and I heard, a customer calling in for a specific color. "Nope, we don't have it."
yeah, yeah,
It just blew me away.
yeah. It, it just, and so like I actually believe right now with the headwinds we're running, and I keep saying that because it's like everybody's talking about it now, you know, and you see it in all the Facebook groups.
It's inevitable. Let's just, it's inevitable. So we're going through the aftermath,
Yep.
so it is gonna change, not just automotive, but, every sector, is gonna change. It's gonna
Yeah.
go through some different changes. Some we're gonna have to pivot. We're gonna have to, do all kinds of creative things to, hold together and, stay strong.
Well, I would, I would say for someone with the right mindset that they would embrace these times
Mhm.
because it is so easy to stand out from the crowd now. Because as I listen to hundreds of these phone calls, that it's just like you're saying, some variation of, yeah, it's not available. Click next. Because customers are just coming, right? Like I'll have another one next. And it's like for that person that can make the connection, or the dealership that wants to put in the 90 days of hard yards to really spend the time with their people, to evaluate, to look at, and the salespeople and the managers to have the appetite for it. You put 3 months in, you'll come out the other side, and it will shift market dynamics. If you want to
Mhm.
stand out in your market, now's actually that time. And I would see it as opportunity. And that's what I keep telling my clients is I have Oakland Acura. We have a coaching platform. This year, they have 5 salespeople. They've done logged over 700 one-on-one coachings between a manager and a salesperson. You can't
That's
tell
great.
me that that's not going to have a competitive advantage. And so
Right.
that's that I think is I'm embracing this because I think what I'm doing with my clients, we're in the right spot. And it's interesting to hear you talk about what you're wanting to do. You're not looking to make the $1 million, and watch you make it as a byproduct of the mindset, you know? Uh, because I think sometimes we chase so hard and we never catch it, right? But
Right.
I love that. Are there some examples that you'd want to share where things are kind of starting to germinate for you in that regard? It sounds like you've
Well, I'll just say this, I haven't even officially launched. All I
right.
did was, an update on LinkedIn, which I thought was private. So I did not mean it to go
Oh,
out to the network, just FYI.
right.
So all of a sudden I'm getting text messages from all these people and I'm like, "What are you talking about? Oh,
Oh,
you opened your own company, you're doing your own gig, tell me more about it." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So then I saw it on LinkedIn and I'm like, "Oh, Lord."
yeah.
So it was not intentional, but I think now looking back, it was probably the best thing that could have happened is because I'm getting a lot of traction. I've got 4 MSAs on file now, and it's exciting for me to
Yeah.
be able to open up new doors and look at things differently. I have to be honest, like I've worked for, I did the basic thing, go to college, work for corporate, do all these things. And, you know, I'm tired of making money for other people. And then I'm also tired of, telling that they know better than I do. And so it's like, you know what? Why don't I just take what I know and, through my network and my connections and kind of, bridge that gap and form that community that, we can be the forefront or the face to create opportunities or resources to not only OEMs, but, different suppliers and vendors that need, some extra, oomph
Mm,
to get them over the edge,
yeah.
So, I mean, it all depends on, what the strategy and the vision is, but it's really, forming a great community of people who genuinely want to make this world a better place and, specifically in automotive, but it doesn't necessarily have to be always in automotive. I've got, some outreaches that I've had some meetings with, who do a lot of statistical analysis
Mm,
and they want, to see if they can partner up and if I can open doors for them. So, I mean, it's a it's just a wild card right now. And there's just like so many people that are looking to have, just that conversation and just that, open the network to other possibilities to help them grow and succeed as well.
yeah.
So it's turning out a lot better than I imagined, even though I originally planned on launching, at NADA in 2024.
Did you? Yeah.
But now
Okay.
I'm gonna probably launch, before the end of this year.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you like launch like have it as in full on booth and
Um,
the whole program or
I probably won't do a booth at
yeah.
NADA, but I think I'll do some sort of fun event.
There you go. You know
And then
what?
I
For the expense of having a booth and what you get out of it, you'd get way better conversations doing it socially, renting out,
yeah,
a nice suite, having inviting your network and yeah, ah,
yeah.
that's
I'm not ready for a booth yet, and I can't tell you how many I mean, I look at the back of my door, and I have probably 800 badges from the events that I've attended. Not only did the OEMs attend these events, but everything's hubbed in either Vegas or San Francisco, the
right.
in New Orleans and stuff. But I have been to so many events that it's like my reminder of, my time on the road living out of a
Um,
suitcase. And
sore feet.
yeah, I started wearing flats. When I was younger, I could rock the heels, but my feet can't take it now.
Ugh, my
Especially
feet
after
could
COVID, I had to retrain my feet to go back into heels.
uh, that's funny. That's funny. Well,
Yeah.
Melissa, I really appreciate you joining me. This has been an amazing conversation. You got a fan. I'm cheering for you, and I
Yeah,
hope.
we'll definitely stay connected.
Yeah, yeah,
I think there is some opportunities for some, alliances and how we can help each other out.
you bet, you bet.